Here is the true-life story of royal turmoil, told in 6 parts, based on the provided documents. A Sentinel's devotion, Princess Anne's revelation, and Camilla challenging the throne. Royal turmoil erupts. The rain fell steadily on the windscreen of the Range Rover as it pulled away from the Royal Lodge in Windsor Great Park. Inside, the man who had once been the favorite son of a queen, Prince Andrew, slumped low in the back seat. Just hours earlier, and he had been released from police custody following an arrest on suspicion of misconduct in public office. A stunning development tied to his long-denied friendship with the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The photograph of him in that car, captured by a long-lens camera and splashed across every front page, was more than an image of a man in trouble. It was a portrait of a monarchy in crisis. For years, the royal family had managed to contain the damage, circling the wagons around the problematic Duke of York. But the release of newly unsealed court documents, emails, flight logs, and personal correspondence had ripped the scab off a wound that would not heal. The world now saw not just Andrew's connection to Epstein, but the deep entanglement of his entire immediate family. It was revealed that Sarah Ferguson, his ex-wife who still lived with him, had taken their daughters, Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie, to visit Epstein at his New York townhouse just days after his release from prison in 2009. Emails showed Ferguson referring to Epstein as the brother I always wished for, and begging him for money to upgrade the girls' flights. Other documents suggested that even Princess Beatrice was looped into discussions about managing the media narrative surrounding her mother's friendship with the financier. The revelation sent a shockwave through the corridors of Buckingham Palace. For the king, and it was a personal and political nightmare. But for his sister, the Princess Royal, it was the final confirmation of a truth she had long suspected. Anne had spent her entire life dedicated to the concept of duty. She was the one who, as a young woman, refused to curtsy to the crown jewels because they were just objects. She was the one who had taken a bullet during an attempted kidnapping because she refused to be dramatic about it. And she was the one who, year after year, topped the list of working royals, completing over 450 engagements annually while younger family members enjoyed their privileges. Now, as she read the detailed accounts of her brother's arrogance and the willful blindness of his household, a cold fury settled in her bones. This was not about family loyalty anymore. This was about the survival of the institution her mother had bequeathed to them. The documents painted a picture of entitlement taken to a criminal extreme. And she saw the way Andrew had bullied his younger brother Edward when they were children, and how that arrogance had never dissipated. It had simply metastasized. For Anne, the monarchy was not a birthright to be exploited. It was a trust to be honored. Her brother had broken that trust, and in doing so, he had brought shame upon the legacy of their parents, the late Queen and Prince Philip. She was utterly fed up, a sentiment she shared with her inner circle, making it clear that the king had her full and unwavering support in whatever decision he made, no matter how brutal. The atmosphere inside the king's study at Buckingham Palace was thick with tension. Seated across from his elder brother, Andrew was no longer the confident naval officer or the queen's favorite child. The weight of the evidence, the global opprobrium, and the stark reality of his situation pressed down on him. For years he had fought back, relying on a combination of denial and arrogance that his mother's protection had allowed to flourish. He instinctively put up a fight whenever called on the carpet, but this time was different. He was facing the full force of a monarchy determined to protect itself. King Charles III, still navigating his own health battles and the recent cancer diagnosis of his daughter-in-law, Catherine, looked at his brother not with anger, but with a profound and weary sadness. The scandals were piling up. Andrew's disastrous BBC Newsnight interview, the out-of-court settlement with Virginia Giuffre, the stripping of his military titles by their late mother, and now these new emails. Charles had read the reports of the Andrew-shaped elephant in the room that haunted family gatherings. He knew that his own son, William, had been urging him for years to take decisive action. The heir to the throne was taking a hard line, and concerned that any softness towards Andrew would taint the future monarchy he was trying to build. The king read his brother the Riot Act. He spoke not just as a monarch, but as the head of a family under siege. He pointed out that Andrew's presence was a distraction from the good work the family was trying to do, from his own efforts to modernize the monarchy to the incredible bravery Catherine was showing in her public recovery. For the first time, Andrew seemed to listen, and the fight went out of him. The realization that he had dug a hole he couldn't climb out of finally sank in. He agreed to be stripped of his remaining titles and to formally retreat from any pretense of public life. But the decision went further. The king, alongside William, decided that the contamination could not be limited to Andrew alone. A quiet but firm directive was issued regarding Andrew's daughters, Beatrice and Eugenie. Despite the king's personal fondness for them, and they would be excluded from the royal carriage procession at Royal Ascot, a highly visible symbol of royal favor and one of the most coveted invitations of the social season. It was a public snub, a clear message that the association with their father's world had consequences. The York family was now firmly on the outside. While the drama of the Yorks unfolded, a quieter but equally significant shift was happening in the public perception of the Queen. Camilla had navigated one of the most remarkable turnarounds in public relations history. From being the other woman in the collapse of Charles and Diana's marriage, she had ascended to the throne as Queen Consort, with the late Queen Elizabeth herself endorsing the transition. She was devoted to Charles, down to earth with those she met, and assiduous in her charity work, particularly in promoting literacy. Yet the ghosts of the past were not easily laid to rest. For a significant portion of the British public, and even within the palace walls, she remained a figure of contention. The shadow of Diana, the people's princess, loomed large. For many, Camilla could never fully fill that void. This simmering tension came to a head amidst the health crisis of 2024 and 2025. As King Charles stepped back from duties to undergo treatment, and Catherine, the Princess of Wales, retreated from the public eye to fight her own battle with cancer, the royal family faced a leadership vacuum. Into this void stepped Princess Anne, whose workload became nothing short of heroic, but it also highlighted the disparity in effort. According to official counts, Anne attended 217 events in a single year, while William, the future king, attended only 71, placing him behind even his stepmother. It was within this context that Princess Anne gave voice to a concern that was becoming an outcry among the British people. Through sources close to her, she let it be known that she was deeply frustrated with the Prince of Wales. It wasn't personal, it was about the principle of duty. She couldn't understand why William, living so close to Windsor Castle, where many investitures were held, wasn't taking on more. His limited involvement during a time of genuine crisis seemed, to her, a failure to understand the fundamental obligation of royalty. Her inner circle expressed that it bothered her to see him remain at his home, Adelaide Cottage, while she crisscrossed the country. Anne's revelation was not a malicious leak, but a stark reminder from the family's most dedicated sentinel. The monarchy is not a right, it is a responsibility. The public rallied behind her, seeing in her words the voice of a generation that understood duty above comfort and popularity. As Princess Anne's criticisms echoed in the press, a different kind of storm was brewing around the Queen. Camilla's position, so carefully crafted over 2 decades, and was facing its most serious challenge yet. It was not a scandal in the traditional sense, but something more insidious, a steady drip of public perception. The prolonged absence of Catherine, whose poise and elegance had made her the most beloved member of the royal family, inadvertently turned the spotlight back on Camilla. In the court of public opinion, the comparison was unflattering. YouGov polls consistently showed Kate Middleton topping the list of favorite royals, while Camilla struggled to even break into the top 5, falling behind even the Dukes of Edinburgh and Gloucester. Charles saw this. He knew that his wife, despite her hard work, was struggling to capture the public's affection in the same way. There was a feeling among some that she was competing for the spotlight, and the dynamic between the two women was described by insiders as complex and fraught. Rumors of Camilla's growing contempt for Kate's popularity began to circulate, painting a picture of tension within the women's quarters of the monarchy. Sensitive to this, and aware of the fragility of his own health, Charles acted decisively. He ordered his closest aides to prioritize the protection and promotion of his wife's image. Buckingham Palace confirmed its concern, acknowledging that her reputation needed bolstering. The king's response was both sentimental and strategic. He knew that his legacy was intertwined with hers. By ensuring she had a central and visible place in all key royal engagements, he aimed to reinforce her legitimacy and cement her status not as a temporary consort, but as a permanent queen. It was a calculated move to shield her from criticism and to tell the world that she was an essential pillar of his reign, even as the shadow of the past and the brightness of the future threatened to eclipse her. The consequences of the Epstein files continued to ripple outward, isolating Andrew's daughters in ways that were both public and private. The decision to ban them from the royal Ascot carriage was the most visible sign of their demotion, but behind the palace walls, the chill was far more profound. Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie, once part of the cool group of young royals, found themselves increasingly alone. Their closeness to the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, Harry and Meghan, which had once seemed a strategic alliance of the sidelined, now looked like a liability. Harry and Meghan, living in California, were carefully cultivating an image of moral and social superiority, and any association with the Epstein-tainted York family was to be avoided at all costs. Sources indicated that the bond between the Sussexes and the Yorks had fallen apart. The situation was made worse by the frostiness emanating from the Prince and Princess of Wales. Kate, it was remembered, had been made to feel deeply uncomfortable by the York family when she first started dating William. Andrew had reportedly convinced his daughters that William was marrying below his station and that the relationship would fizzle out. That slight had never been forgotten. By the time the new revelations emerged, Kate's distance from Beatrice and Eugenie had solidified into ice. Notably, there were no presents under the Sandringham tree for the York sisters from the Wales family at Christmas, a silent but eloquent gesture that everyone noticed. In their isolation, the sisters found an unlikely lifeline in their cousin, Zara Tyndall. Living on Princess Anne's Gatcombe Park estate, Zara and her husband Mike offered a refuge from the storm. They hosted family get-togethers, ensuring that the York children, Sienna, Athena, August, and Ernest, could play with their Tyndall cousins, Mia, Lena, and Lucas. It was a small pocket of normalcy, a way to shield the next generation from the sins of the fathers. While William took a hard line and Charles remained fiercely loyal but increasingly powerless to fully integrate them, it was Anne's daughter, Zara, who embodied the Princess Royal's own quiet sense of duty, protecting the family, even its most tarnished members, from within. The turmoil that had simmered for years had now reached a full boil. The monarchy, and an institution built on continuity and discretion, was fractured in plain sight. For the king, the challenges were immense. He was managing his own health, supporting his daughter-in-law through hers, trying to reconcile his warring sons, dealing with a brother who was a global pariah.